Are you an aspiring leader who knows you have more to offer but you can't seem to get ahead? Do you frequently feel overwhelmed and under-supported? Listen to the Overcome to Become podcast as we talk about actionable tasks and mindsets that you can apply to begin leading yourself. Hi, my name is Angela Buckley, your host and author of the Strength in Nature Leadership Series. I'm a mother, consultant, triathlete, and author. In Overcome to Become, I share with you the science-backed and experience-proven lessons I've learned in my own leadership journey to beat burnout. Thanks for listening. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Overcome to Become. My name is Angela Buckley. I am your host today, and I am so happy to be here because I have yet another exciting episode to talk to you about how we can capture the things that are around us in order to help us overcome all of the stresses that happen in life and overcome the overwhelm. So one of the things that we really want to do is make sure that we focus on taking care of ourselves in order for us to be able to have capacity to lead others. This is our 6th episode of the 2nd season, and I wouldn't be here without some of the support that I get from my sponsors. So I would like to give a real quick call out today to Athletic Brewing. I ambassador their non-alcoholic beer because they brew without compromise. It's a non-alcoholic brewing company that is dedicated to making great tasting craft brews without compromise. Their lineup of styles lets you enjoy the taste and experience of refreshing craft beer without sacrificing your performance, passions, health, and good taste. They're a fit for all times, made for all palates, and enjoyed by anyone who loves great beer. They also offer sparkling waters based on hops as well. And one of the reasons that I really appreciate my ambassadorship with Athletic Brewing is because they are so focused on getting people outdoors and supporting outdoors endeavors. There are a lot of activities associated with their ambassadors for trail maintenance and other things as well. So they are not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as well. If you'd like to learn more about them, you can find the link in my show notes that will give you a little bit of a discount, and you can also use the checkout code ABuckley20 when you're checking out. That's ABuckley20. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, so this week's episode is all about electrons and the waves, and what does that even really mean? Waterfalls and oceans, beachfronts, those beachfront vacations, they are such a popular thing, but do you know why? Really what's happening is that when water is crashing in on itself, it's releasing negative ions. Why do we care about negative ions? Because our body is constantly exchanging negative ions, positive ions, and we need to have negative ions coming into our body in order to really focus on reducing inflammation, etc. So last week I talked to you about some researchers in Japan and the work that they were doing with getting out in nature and seeing green. And today I'd like to talk to you about some researchers, the New York State Psychiatric Institute, and they were recently published. Actually, this is not that recent. It's 2005. And they were really focusing on what are non-medical interventions for seasonal affective disorder, which is a type of depression associated with lack of light. And so they looked at 2 modalities, bright light. So, right, like the sun is going away. Those of us who live in the northern half of the world, we don't see the sun through the winter very much. And the other modality that they looked at was the impact of negative ions. So we understand that negative ions are readily available in nature, in particular when we're at waterfalls, in particular when we're at the beach side. And what they wanted to do is, in a controlled study, understand if negative ions produced and targeted at an individual would be helpful in affecting the seasonal affective disorder. And what they found in their randomized controlled study was that they saw a 50% improvement for individuals, regardless if they used light. They saw close to 50% improvement. These numbers are 51 and 53, but so approximately 50% improvement for the individuals who had just light, and then 50% improvement for the individuals who had just the negative therapy. And what they were doing with these individuals was 1 hour of light therapy, 1 hour of negative ion therapy. They did not do further studies that I was able to identify on could you do a shorter amount of time or anything else. So some studies, the studies are limited to the variables that they have and to the individuals who are participating in the study. So I can't speak to whether you could maximize that by dropping it down more at this point. I'll keep my eyes open for further research to see if that magic 20-minute number that we heard about taking time in nature and walking would also be effective. But the modality that they looked at was 1 hour of bright light, 1 hour of negative ion therapy. So what is the good news for us? The good news for us is that we know that when we are out in nature, we are also being bombarded with negative ions. There's some suggestion that when you're in urban settings, the density of negative ions is not as great as the density of negative ions when you're out in nature. So let's take a step back here for 1 second. What's positive ion? What's negative ion? If you remember back into your grade school days, maybe you talk about water, and when water breaks apart, you have hydrogen and you have oxygen, and or actually you really have an H and an OH, really. But you're going to break down, and what happens then is that you have an unbalanced charge, right? So one half of that molecule is going to be negative, the other half of that molecule is going to be positive. When you put that together, then you have that neutral molecule. But so these are part of those elements that are making that up. And you hear us talking about maybe free radicals. Those are words that are using. And what's happening then really is that your body and nature is really just this constant exchange of positive, negative, positive, negative. And our body has a lot of positive in us, and we want to, in order to clean things up, so to speak, you want to get some of those negative ions into your body, absorbing it and letting it function at its fullest. So what we're trying to do is get ourselves back to basics, get ourselves back to kind of a ground zero, so to speak. And one of the ways we can do that is by making sure that we have enough of the negative ions kind of in our space. So what we can do is make sure that we are spending time in nature, and what we can do is look specifically for waterfalls, look specifically for beach time, beach therapy, in order to really target what those ions are. So really, what are we looking at today? One of the things that people ask me is I would go to the beach and I feel good when I go to the beach, and I don't feel good by the time I get home. I felt good when I was there, but I don't know how to bring that back into my everyday life. So now that you know what's happening when you're at the beach, yes, you're unplugged, very, very important, but there's also a physical element of healing that's associated with being out and being exposed to these negative ions. What can you do to start bringing some of that into your everyday life? If you have access to nature and you have access to waterfalls, or maybe you spend some time hiking from time to time and you go out and waterfall chasing, that's really a thing. I know people who do that, and it's beautiful and it's great photography, and it's great exercise. I I personally am not a huge beach fan. I prefer to be in mountains and give me a babbling brook any day of the week. But the sun just tears me up. I am burnt and tired and dehydrated, and so the beach is not always my favorite place to be. Whereas a waterfall, a babbling brook, a walk in nature, that's where I get my that's where I get my negative ions. And I encourage you to take a look around. Where can you access negative ions in your life so that we are really targeting some of the physical elements of overwhelm? And as we really understand what's happening when it comes to some of the physical elements, then we can really ground ourselves, zero ourselves out, and then start working on some of the elements that are associated with, of course, the spiritual and the mental. We'll get on to those in subsequent seasons. So today's message is take some time in nature, take some time specifically looking for waterfalls. If you cannot, there are pieces of equipment that are available that cascade negative ions, if that's something that you feel like you need to do. But the more you know, the more you can start adopting some of these habits and practices into your life. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. If you feel so moved, I would greatly appreciate if you take a look at some of the links on my Instagram page. In there is also a GoFundMe. For those of you who don't know, I am an athlete racing with Team USA age group, and every time that I go to Worlds, it costs me between $5,000 and $10,000. So my next race is May 1st. We will be in Ibiza, Spain, and I will be racing the aquathlon, which is a swim in the ocean and a 5K run this time. The format changes depending on the venue and water temperatures. So really looking forward to donning my Team USA kit and appreciate any support that you can offer. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Talk to you next week. You've just concluded an episode of Overcome to Become, a leadership podcast focusing on leading yourself first. Thanks for listening. I'm Angela Buckley with Creatively Efficient, author of the Strength in Nature Leadership Series. To learn more about mindsets and leadership, follow me on Instagram at Creatively Efficient.